Galactic Council betrayed humans, so we warned them. Run! The Galactic Council's citadel hung above the blue edge of the Osiris Nebula like a jeweled crown. Its outer rings shimmered with soft light, and the long windows of its central chamber glowed like calm eyes in the dark. Inside, the air was clean and carefully tuned for many kinds of lungs. The floor was a smooth black glass that reflected every robe, every crest, every nervous flick of an antenna or tail. It was meant to feel timeless, like peace could be built into the walls. Counselor Vale of the Thren sat in the third arc of seats, hands folded, posture perfect. Vale had attended more sessions than most living delegates. He had seen wars end and treaties break. He had learned how to watch faces and read silences. Tonight's gathering felt wrong in a quiet way, like a song sung one note too high. Across the chamber, the human delegation sat in their assigned section. They wore simple, dark, formal clothing. No bright scales, no ritual ribbons, no metallic implants. Humans always looked underdecorated among the older species, as if they had arrived at a grand ceremony by accident. Yet Vale had learned not to mistake plainness for weakness. Humans had a way of being calm that made other species uneasy. Not lazy calm, focused calm. Ambassador Mara Sato, humanity's lead envoy, watched the chamber with steady eyes. Her hands rested on the armrests, fingers still. The small translation node at her collar pulsed faintly. Around her sat a handful of human aides. Some carried tablets, some had small earpieces. They did not speak unless they needed to. The speaker's dais rose at the center, a platform of white stone imported from a dead planet that no one liked to talk about. Speaker Halix, an elder of the Averin, lifted both arms, and the chamber quieted. The speaker's feathers were arranged in ceremonial patterns, every angle showing status. Behind Halix, the council's star emblem spread wide, lit from within. "Honored delegates," Halix said, voice amplified into every language at once. "We welcome our newest partners in unity. We welcome humanity." A soft wave of applause moved through the chamber, palms together, claws tapping, tendrils tapping the floor. A few species did not clap, they merely stared. Halix continued. "We stand at a turning point. Our borders grow, our trade grows. Our shared security grows. Humanity has proven itself capable and cooperative. Their systems are positioned at an important edge of our mapped territory, and their ingenuity has already improved our supply networks and medical exchanges." A large hollow display awakened behind the speaker, showing a map of the spiral arm. Human space sat like a bright bridge between older council space and the uncharted dark beyond. Vale watched several counselors glance at that map with something like relief. The frontier had always been a headache. Pirates, strange signals, silent ruins. Now humanity sat there, fast builders, quick learners, willing to patrol. Useful, very useful. Halix spoke of mutual defense, of shared warning systems, of the shield accord that had been drafted and refined over the last 2 years. The public part was clean and hopeful. It promised response fleets, shared sensors, coordinated evacuations if needed. Vale had read the public document. It was fair on paper. But Vale had also seen enough to know that paper could be folded into any shape. As the speaker praised unity, Vale noticed a flicker in the private channel indicator embedded in his armrest, a thin line of light that most delegates ignored. It meant encrypted session data in motion. He narrowed his eyes slightly, not at the light itself, but at the timing. During a welcome speech, it was unusual for the council's internal network to push high-level packets. It could be something routine. Or it could be something else. He touched the armrest control with one clawed fingertip and requested a status read. The system returned a polite denial, not authorized. That denial alone made his stomach tighten. Across the chamber, Ambassador Sato's tablet screen glimmered. She did not move, but one of her aides shifted, as if listening to a private message. For a brief moment, the aide's face tightened, just a small change around the eyes and mouth. Then it smoothed again. Vale leaned back. Humans were getting something too. Halix concluded the public portion with formal blessings. The chamber applauded again. The lights softened. The speaker invited the delegates to stand for the symbolic signing of the accord, a ceremonial act to be streamed across hundreds of worlds. While the public cameras captured smiling faces, another vote moved beneath the surface. On Vale's armrest, the light line pulsed again. This time, a name flickered across his personal display. Emergency Strategic Session, Aegis Protocol. The meeting was marked closed and restricted. The time stamp showed it was happening now in parallel through a secure network layer. Aegis protocol was an old term. Vale had heard it once decades ago in a war room. It was never used for celebrations. He tried again to access it. Denied. Near the human section, the same pulse reached them. Mara Sato did not look down at her tablet. But her right hand tightened slightly on the armrest, like a muscle remembering a wound. A small chime sounded in her earpiece. Not loud enough for the chamber, but enough for her to hear. Her aide, Lucas Wren, leaned close without turning his head, lips barely moving. "They're running a sub-vote," he whispered in basic English, careful and soft. "Encrypted, we caught fragments." Mara kept her eyes forward. "Fragments of what?" Lucas swallowed. "Designation categories, risk allocation, a phrase repeated, sacrificial buffer." For one breath, Mara's face looked like stone. Then she inhaled slowly and let the air out in control. "Get me the exact terms," she said, still calm. "Don't guess, don't fill in gaps." Lucas nodded once. His fingers moved under the table, typing into a hidden pad. The human delegation had come prepared for diplomacy. They had also come prepared for politics. Mara's gaze moved to the star map behind the speaker, still glowing. Human space on the frontier. A bridge, a shield, a wall. Sometimes walls were meant to protect what was behind them. Sometimes walls were meant to keep something in place until it broke. The public ceremony continued. Delegates stepped forward in order, placing claws, hands, tendrils, or palms on the shared holoseal. Their signatures appeared as glowing marks in the air. Cameras recorded it all. While the cameras watched the public signatures, the Council's hidden network watched something else: probability charts, threat projections, and cold calculations of acceptable loss. Far below the chamber in a secure data vault, the Council's Strategic Committee reviewed a report stamped with a black symbol, an empty circle, the mark used for unknown enemies. The report carried a name few spoke aloud: the Karen Drift. A region beyond known space where probes stopped returning, where stars dimmed in patterns that did not match natural death. The Council did not know exactly what lived there. They only knew that something moved, and it moved toward them. Their best analysts predicted that if the Karen Drift entered Council space, the first systems to see it would be the ones on the frontier. Human systems. The committee's logic was simple and cruel. If the drift was real, there was no guarantee any fleet could stop it at the edge. But a buffer might buy time, a buffer might slow it, a buffer might die loudly enough to warn the core worlds. And humanity, newly integrated, politically inexperienced, and positioned perfectly on the map, could be that buffer. That was the thought that slid through the encrypted subvote like a knife through silk. Back in the chamber, the speaker lifted the completed holoseal for all to see. The room cheered. The sound was bright and confident. Mara did not cheer. She stood when protocol required, clapped when cameras turned her way, and smiled with her mouth while her mind raced. Lucas's hidden pad vibrated. He passed a small slip of smart paper to Mara as if it were a normal schedule note. She read it without changing expression. The slip contained 3 lines, short and ugly. Category S7 allocated buffer. It was written in the Council's own strategic language. They had agreed to mutual defense on camera. Off camera, they had decided humanity would be the first to burn. Mara returned the slip to Lucas, who folded it into nothing and slid it away. Around them, the ceremony ended. Delegates began to mingle. Some approached the humans with warm greetings. Others approached with polite smiles that did not reach their eyes. A tall delegate from the Sulari, silver-skinned, elegant, stepped toward Mara. "Ambassador Sato," the Sulari said, "a beautiful day for unity, yes." Mara inclined her head. "A beautiful day," she agreed. The Sulari's eyes lingered a moment too long, as if checking whether the humans had noticed something. Then the delegate smiled and moved on. Mara watched them go. The chamber suddenly felt like a theater. Everyone was playing a role. Some knew the script, some didn't. A human aide at the end of the row, Nadia Chen, leaned in slightly. "We've got more," she murmured. "They used our space as the line in every simulation. Everyone, like it was never a question." Mara's voice remained steady. "Do we have the full packet? Not yet, but enough to know the intent." Mara looked at the star map again. Human worlds glowed bright and trusting. She imagined those dots as real places. Cities, oceans, farms under alien suns, children learning council languages in new schools, workers building docking stations for council ships. She imagined council evacuation fleets leaving the core worlds first, heading inward, while the frontier screamed. A memory rose in her mind, not personal but historical, old human stories about alliances that promised protection, about borders drawn by people who did not live on them. Her jaw tightened. "Any sign they think we're unaware?" she asked. Lucas answered carefully. "Hard to tell. The encryption is heavy, which suggests secrecy even among themselves. But some of their security teams are watching us more closely than usual." Mara nodded slightly. Humans had learned long ago that betrayal was often quiet. It did not always come with a declared enemy. Sometimes it came with smiles and signatures. The speaker approached the human section, flanked by attendants. Halix's feathers shifted like a curtain of color. "Ambassador Sato," Halix said warmly, "your people have done well today. History will remember this accord." Mara offered the expected diplomatic smile. "We hope so, Speaker." Halix studied her for a fraction of a second. "I trust your government will move quickly to integrate your sensor arrays with ours. The frontier must be watched. It is a sensitive region." "A sensitive region," Mara echoed. "Yes," Halix said, voice smooth. "It would be a tragedy if anything happened there, but with your vigilance we will be safer." Mara's smile did not change. "We are vigilant." Halix nodded, satisfied, and turned away. When the speaker left, Mara exhaled slowly through her nose. The air tasted too clean, too controlled. She turned her head slightly, keeping her voice low. "Open a private channel to Earthside Strategic. Level black. No council relays. Use the mirror route." Lucas's eyebrows lifted. "That's a serious move." "So is what we just read," Mara replied. Nadia's fingers moved. "Signal will take longer, but it will be ours." "Do it," Mara said. As her team worked, the chamber's celebration continued. Delegates drank ceremonial liquids that tasted like metal or fruit or nothing at all. They exchanged gifts, polished stones, data crystals, strands of biofiber. They spoke of hope. Mara watched them like a storm watching people dance. Minutes later, Lucas's pad flashed once. Connection made. A calm voice came through Mara's earpiece, Admiral Rafik Ilya's Earthside Strategic Command. "Sato, you wouldn't use this channel for a toast. Speak." Mara kept her eyes on the chamber. "Admiral, the Council ran an encrypted subvote during the signing." Silence for half a beat. "Go on." "They designated human space as an S7 allocated buffer. In their models, we absorb first contact with an unknown external threat. Their evacuation priority lists Council core as essential. Human systems are listed as non-essential." The silence this time was longer, heavier. Mara could almost hear the Admiral thinking, pulling up files, comparing old suspicions to new proof. Finally, he spoke. "How solid is this?" "Direct language," Mara said. "Not rumor, not interpretation. We intercepted fragments and verified key terms. I can send packets once we strip Council signatures." "Do that," the Admiral said. His voice stayed calm, but something sharp lived under it. "Do they know you know?" "Unclear," Mara replied. "Some delegates are watching us." The speaker hinted about the frontier being sensitive. It felt like a test. "Understood," the Admiral said. "Maintain diplomatic posture, don't provoke, get out clean." Mara's gaze drifted again to the glowing map. "Admiral, there's more. The threat is real enough for them to break protocol. They're scared. We've been tracking deep-range anomalies for years," the Admiral said. "We didn't know the Council had proof, or that they would choose this." Mara's voice hardened slightly. "They chose to sacrifice us." "Yes," the Admiral said, "and now we choose what to do with that knowledge." Mara looked at the happy chamber, at the shining citadel, at the faces that believed themselves wise. She pictured humanity's frontier colonies. She pictured Council fleets retreating past them like a tide leaving bones. Her voice dropped to a whisper, though no one around her could hear. "We won't be their shield without consent." The Admiral's reply came quiet and firm. "No, we won't." Mara ended the call and returned to the social flow like an actor stepping back onto the stage. She accepted a greeting from a small insectoid delegate. She nodded at a merchant prince who praised human engineering. She smiled at a group photo request. Her face performed diplomacy while her mind built a different plan. When the celebrations began to thin, the human delegation prepared to depart. Council security escorted them through the bright corridors of the Citadel, past murals of unity and statues of past speakers. At the transit gate, as the humans waited for clearance, Mara stood still and watched the last of the Council delegates drift away into their private shuttles. Somewhere behind the walls, hidden committees would be congratulating themselves for clever strategy. They believed they had placed humanity neatly into a role, a buffer, a delay, a sacrifice. Mara turned to Lucas. "Send a second message," she said. "To our frontier commanders, quietly, tell them to initiate Lantern Protocol." Lucas nodded, understanding without needing it explained. Lantern Protocol was not an attack plan. It was a survival plan. A plan for when someone else's war tried to become humanity's funeral. Nadia asked softly, "What do we tell the Council?" Mara's eyes stayed steady. "Nothing yet," she said. "Not until we know what's coming, and not until we know how far they're willing to go." Their shuttle doors opened with a soft hiss. The humans stepped inside. The Citadel's lights reflected off the hull like polite stars. As the shuttle detached and drifted away, Mara looked back at the Galactic Council's shining crown in the dark. From a distance, it looked peaceful, beautiful even. But she had seen the hidden vote. She had read the cold words. Somewhere out beyond the frontier, something unknown was moving, and the Council had decided who would be thrown into its path first. Mara sat down, clasped her hands, and spoke quietly to her team in simple English. "They think we are the wall." No one replied at first. The shuttle's engines hummed, steady and controlled. Then Lucas said, "Are we?" Mara stared out at the star map on her tablet at the bright chain of human worlds. She thought about what humans had built in secret, what they had prepared without boasting, what they had learned from their own long history of fear and resilience. She answered with a voice that held both anger and resolve. "We can be a wall," she said. "But we won't be a wall for people who push us forward and call it unity." Her tablet blinked with an incoming secure message from Earthside. Only 2 words, simple and heavy. "Understood, proceed." Myra leaned back and closed her eyes for a moment, not in defeat, in focus. Indecision. Outside, the Council's citadel grew smaller behind them. Ahead, the frontier waited. The human frontier station called Dawnreach floated at the edge of mapped space like a lonely lighthouse. Its long arms stretched out into the dark, holding sensor arrays, docking bays, and communication towers. Beyond it, the stars grew thin and strange, like someone had brushed them away with a careless hand. Commander Elias Morgan stood in the main observation deck, hands behind his back. He had spent 10 years on the frontier, and the dark no longer scared him. What worried him was when the dark changed. The wide screen in front of him showed a slow, steady flow of data. Energy readings, gravity waves, light distortion, all normal, all quiet, a quiet that felt too clean. Behind him, Lieutenant Priadas stepped forward. "Message coming in from Earthside Command," she said. "Priority black." Morgan turned at once. "Put it through." The air filled with the image of Admiral Ilias. The Admiral looked tired, but his eyes were sharp. "Commander Morgan," he said, "this is not a drill. Lantern Protocol is now active." Morgan felt his chest tighten. Lantern Protocol had been a theory for years. A plan for a future no one wanted to see. "Understood," he said. "What's the situation?" "The Galactic Council made a choice," the Admiral said. "They marked our frontier as expendable. We intercepted proof. There is a threat moving in from beyond known space. We don't know what it is yet, but the Council believes it is real." Morgan looked back at the starfield. "And they want us to slow it down." "Yes," the Admiral said, "without asking." Silence filled the room. Crew members nearby pretended not to listen, but every one of them was still. "What are our orders?" Morgan asked. "Prepare," the Admiral said. "Not for war, for survival. Begin Phase 1. Quiet movement only, no public signals, no Council access to our deeper systems." Morgan nodded. "We'll start immediately." The image faded. Morgan turned to his crew. "You heard the word prepare," he said. "That means we move people before we move ships. Get the frontier colonies ready for silent evacuation drills. No panic, no headlines, just practice." Lieutenant Does nodded. "I'll notify the local governors, secure channels only." "Good," Morgan said, "and wake the deep sensors." A technician looked up. "Sir, those haven't been active in years. They draw a lot of power." Morgan's voice stayed calm. "So does being alive." The technician smiled slightly and turned back to his console. Deep inside Dawnreach, systems that had been sleeping came online. Old human technology built before humanity joined the Council. Systems designed not to impress allies, but to survive alone. Long-range sensors pushed their reach into the dark, not just looking for ships, but for patterns in space itself. In a small colony called Greenfall, on a world with wide oceans and silver grass, Governor Alia Morno received her quiet message. It came through a channel she had been told to use only in emergencies. The message was short. Lantern Protocol, Phase 1, begin drills. She stared at the words. Greenfall was a young world. Families, schools, farms, new cities still half built. People who believed they had joined a peaceful galaxy. She called her council together. We're running a system-wide safety exercise, she told them. Off-world evacuation practice, quiet and calm. One of them frowned. Did the council request this? Morno shook her head. This is a human call. They did not argue. They had learned that when Earth made a human call, it meant something serious was behind it. Across dozens of frontier systems, similar messages went out. Always calm, always quiet, always framed as practice. Ships that were labeled as trade vessels quietly changed their internal layouts. Cargo bays became passenger holds. Mining ships checked their jump drives more often than usual. Research stations tested emergency beacons that were not connected to the Council network. On Earth, deep in a mountain command center, Admiral Ilias stood before a wall of displays. Each one showed a human world, a station, a fleet, or a sensor line. Mara Sato stood beside him, her hands clasped behind her back. They're still acting normal, she said. The Council. No signs of panic, no military movement. Good, the Admiral replied. Fear makes people careless. A strategist nearby spoke up. We're seeing strange data from the deep sensors. Ilias turned. Show me. The display changed. A map of the dark beyond the frontier appeared. Points of light marked old probe routes. Several of those points were now marked in gray. Those probes went silent years ago, the strategist said. We thought it was normal failure, but the pattern, it's too clean, like something moved through and wiped them out in a line. Mara felt a chill, like a shadow passing over a table. Exactly, the strategist said. On Dawnreach, Commander Morgan leaned closer to his screen. The deep sensors had picked up something new, not a ship, not a signal, a distortion. Space itself looked bent in a long, slow wave. Can you track it? Morgan asked. The technician shook her head. It's not moving like an object, it's more like a change in the background, like a cold front in the air. Morgan exhaled slowly. Keep watching. Days passed. The Council continued its normal business. Trade agreements, cultural exchanges, joint patrols. Human patrol ships still flew beside Council fleets, smiling in public channels, sharing routine data. But behind the smiles, human systems grew quieter. Communications shifted to older, harder-to-track methods. Fleets began to move in patterns that looked random but were not. Myra attended another council session. This one focused on border security. A delegate proudly spoke about the strength of the Shield Accord. Mara listened and nodded at the right moments. When the session ended, a small delegate from a reptilian species approached her. Ambassador, he said softly, is it true that humans have increased activity on the frontier? Mara met his eyes. We're running safety drills. The delegate tilted his head. That seems wise. Does it? Mara asked. The delegate hesitated, then he lowered his voice. Some of us voted against the sub-vote. We were outnumbered. Mara's heart beat faster, but her face stayed calm. Why tell me this? Because I do not like being alive because someone else died for me, the delegate said, and because whatever is coming, I think you may be the only ones ready. Mara nodded once. Then you should start your own drills, the delegate blinked. Then he gave a small, respectful bow and walked away. Back on Earth, Admiral Ilias received reports from across the frontier. Evacuation readiness was rising, panic was low, trust was holding, but the deep sensors showed the distortion growing closer. In one briefing, a scientist spoke in careful words. We think it's not a fleet, it's more like a field, a moving zone where physical rules change. Inside it, energy behaves differently. Matter breaks down, signals vanish. Can we stop it? Someone asked. The scientist hesitated. We can slow it, maybe, but not with anything we've shown the Council. Ilias looked at Mara. Then it's time to stop hiding. Mara nodded. But not yet. If we show our hand too early, the Council will run. They'll leave their people behind. And if we wait too long, Ilias said, we might not get a chance. The frontier stations felt it first. A low-level hum in their systems, not a sound but a vibration in the math of their sensors. On Dawnreach, Morgan watched a star dim slightly like a candle behind frosted glass. Is that real? Daz asked. Morgan nodded. Log it. In Greenfall's sky, people pointed as one of the distant stars faded and returned like a slow blink. Children laughed, thinking it was a trick of the light. Morna watched from her office window and felt a deep, old fear in her bones. The distortion crossed into the first uninhabited system. Human probes in that system went silent one by one. The Council's sensors saw nothing. Only the human deep network tracked the shadow as it moved. Admiral Ilias called a final meeting. Commanders, scientists, diplomats. "It's time," he said. "We warned them." Mara closed her eyes for a moment. "They didn't listen when we joined. They won't listen easily now." "Then we don't make a speech," Ilias said. "We show them." The first human ships crossed into Council space without weapons charged and without formation. They appeared in dozens of systems at once, not near military stations, but near trade hubs, population centers, and Council relay points. They broadcast one simple word in every language the humans had learned. "Run!" At first, people laughed. A merchant on a floating market world shook his head. "Humans and their jokes," he said. A Council official on a core world frowned. "This is not approved messaging." But then the stars began to change. In the outer systems, suns dimmed slightly like something had passed in front of them, far away and unseen. Long-range probes vanished in silent lines. A Council patrol fleet sent a message. "We've lost contact with our forward ships." Then another. "Our sensors are failing." In the Great Council chamber, Speaker Hallex called an emergency session. The room filled faster than it ever had before. Mara stood among the delegates, calm and still. A general from a powerful species slammed a claw on the floor. "This is human interference," he said. "They are spreading panic." Mara raised her hand. The speaker nodded. "We are spreading warning," she said. "There is a difference." The holomap flared to life. This time it was not a human map. It was the Council's own data. Empty systems, lost signals, strange gaps. A scientist spoke from the side. "Something is moving through our outer sectors. We cannot scan inside it." Mara stepped forward. "We can." She nodded to a human technician. The display changed. A new layer appeared over the map. A wide, slow wave of distortion, moving like a tide. Gasps filled the chamber. "What is that?" Hallex asked. "We don't know what it thinks," Mara said. "We don't know if it even thinks. We only know what it does. It erases. It changes the rules of space, and it is coming." A counselor hissed. "Why didn't you tell us sooner?" Mara's voice stayed steady. "We tried. You were busy deciding who would be thrown in front of it." Silence fell. She continued. "We saw your subvote. We read your plans. You marked our worlds as expendable." Some delegates looked away. Some looked angry. Some looked ashamed. Mara gestured again. The map zoomed in on the human frontier. "This is where it will hit first," she said. "We know, we've always known. That's why we built differently. That's why our stations can move. That's why our cities can fold into shelters. That's why our fleets don't just fight, they block." A general scoffed. "You cannot block something that eats stars." Mara nodded. "Alone, no, but we can slow it." The room filled with quiet murmurs. On the edge of Council space, the distortion reached a human defense line. It did not look like a wall. It looked like empty space. Then space itself bent. Human stations unfolded from hidden positions, forming a wide arc. Not ships, but structures linked by beams of controlled gravity and energy. The distortion hit the line. For a moment, nothing happened. Then the wave slowed. The stars behind the line stayed bright. Council sensors finally saw something. Not a shape, not a fleet. Just a pressure in reality, pushing and being pushed back. Human ships moved in patterns that made no sense to the Council. They did not fire. They adjusted fields, layers, and invisible forces. On the Council worlds, people watched live feeds. Fear spread, but so did awe. The wall held, not perfectly, parts of it dimmed. Sections flickered, but the wave slowed. In the Council chamber, Hallex whispered, "You built this in secret." Mara nodded. "We built it because we've met things like this before, not this exact thing, but the idea of it. The idea that the universe doesn't always care if you're strong or fair." A counselor asked, "Why warn us after what we did?" Mara looked around the room. "Because our children live in this galaxy too." Outside, the human line held for another minute, then another. Human commanders reported losses. Stations drained, ships burned out their systems. But behind the line, Council evacuation fleets began to move, not just for the core worlds now, for the frontier too. The small reptilian delegate Mara had spoken to earlier sent a message. "We are running, and this time we are not leaving you behind." Mara closed her eyes just for a second. The wave pressed harder. The human wall bent. Admiral Ilias's voice came through her earpiece. We can hold for a few more cycles, that's all. Mara looked at the chamber, at the faces that now understood. Then use those cycles, she said. Move everyone you can. The speaker raised his voice, not as a ruler, but as a messenger. All council worlds begin full evacuation. Follow human routes, follow human instructions. For the first time in its long history, the Galactic Council took orders from humanity. Outside, the dark wave pushed forward, and humanity pushed back, not as a shield meant to be thrown away, but as a wall that chose to stand. The human wall did not look strong from a distance. It was not made of metal plates or glowing shields that filled the sky. It was a wide line of stations, ships, and energy fields that bent space just enough to slow the dark wave pushing toward the galaxy. On the command deck of the ship Resolute, Admiral Ilias stood with his hands on the rail, eyes fixed on the main display. The wave pressed against the human line like a deep ocean current. Every second, systems across the wall reported strain, power levels dropped, field generators overheated. Crews worked without pause, their voices calm even when their hands shook. Section 3 is losing stability, a technician said. Gravity field is thinning. Route support ships there, Ilias replied. Shift power from Section 5, keep the line smooth, no sharp gaps. A smooth line mattered. The scientists had explained it in simple terms. The wave did not like sudden changes. It flowed around them like water around a stone. If the wall stayed even, the wave stayed slow. If a hole opened, the wave rushed through. Across the wall, Commander Morgan floated in the center of Dawnreach's control ring. The station had unfolded into its defense form, long arms locking into place with other stations nearby. Beams of soft blue light connected them, not as weapons, but as bridges of force. Pressure is rising, Lieutenant Does said. We're still holding, but our reserves are down to 60%. Morgan nodded. Tell the crews they're doing well. Keep the rhythm, don't rush, don't freeze. Behind the line, evacuation fleets moved like rivers of light. Council ships and human ships flew side by side now. The old tension between them had faded into a shared purpose. Move people, move fast, and do not look back. On a transport ship filled with families from a council world, a small alien child pressed their face against the window. They watched the distant human wall shimmer like a thin sunrise across the stars. Is that where the humans live? The child asked their parent. The parent hesitated. Some of them, they said softly. Some of them are there now, so we can be here. The child nodded, not fully understanding, but feeling the weight in the words. In the Galactic Council chamber, the great room had changed. The bright banners and ceremonial lights were dimmed. The air was filled with urgent voices, status reports, and moving maps. Delegates no longer sat in perfect arcs. They stood in clusters, listening to human officers and their own commanders. Speaker Halleck stood at the center, feathers less perfect now, eyes tired. Mara Sato stood beside him, tablet in hand, relaying information from the front. Evacuation of the inner ring worlds is at 70%, she said. Frontier systems are at 40, we need more ships there. A council logistics officer shook their head. Our fleets are strained, we did not plan for this scale. Mara looked at them. Neither did we. But we planned for something. Halleck raised a hand. All council military craft not engaged in direct defense will be reassigned to evacuation duty, effective now. Some generals protested. Halleck silenced them with a sharp look. There will be no worlds left to defend if we argue. On the wall, the wave pushed harder. A section near the far end flickered. A human station there lost its field for a brief moment. Space twisted. A star behind it dimmed. Morgan saw the alert and felt his heart jump. Stabilize that section now? Support ships rushed in, pouring power into the gap. The line smoothed again. The star's light returned, weak but alive. A cheer rose on several command channels. It did not last long. The wave pressed again. Admiral, a voice said in Ilias's ear. We're burning through our deep reserves. At this rate, we have maybe 2 more cycles. Ilias closed his eyes for half a second. 2 cycles meant time, but not enough time. Mara, he said through the channel. How are the evacuations? Her voice came back, steady but tight. Better, not done. The frontier worlds are still moving. Then we give them more, Ilias said. He turned to his staff. Prepare Phase 2. A young officer looked up, eyes wide. Sir, Phase 2 exposes the core systems. Ilias nodded. I know. Phase 2 had been designed as a last measure. The wall the galaxy saw was only the outer layer. Beneath it was a deeper network, one that drew power from places the Council did not know existed. It was dangerous. It could damage human space itself. But it could hold the wave longer. "Do it," Ilya said. Across the wall, human engineers activated hidden nodes. Space shimmered as deeper fields came online. The wave slowed further like a tide meeting a rising shore. On a distant council world, an old counselor sat in a quiet room watching the feed. They remembered the vote, the cold words, the idea that humanity would be a delay. They whispered to no one, "We were wrong." On Greenfall, Governor Morno stood in a crowded evacuation hall. Families waited with bags and pets and small pieces of home. The sky outside glowed with the light of departing ships. A child tugged at her sleeve. "Are we going to be okay?" Morno knelt down. "Yes," she said. "We're going to be okay because people are helping us." The child looked up at the ceiling as if trying to see through it. "The humans," Morno smiled. "Yes, and others too, we're helping each other now." Back at the wall, alarms rang. "Section 7 is critical," Des shouted. "We're losing the deep field," Morgan grabbed the rail. "Reroute everything, even life support reserves." "Sir, that will—" "Do it," Morgan said. "We can breathe later." The station dimmed, lights flickered, the field surged back into place. Crew members gasped as the air thinned for a moment, then stabilized. Morgan exhaled. "Good work." The wave pressed again like it was learning, like it was testing. Scientists watched the data in awe and fear. "It's reacting," one said, "not thinking but adjusting, like a river finding a new path." On the council chamber floor, a delegate cried out. "We have ships left behind. A colony ship lost its jump window." Mara turned. "Where?" "System K-19, they're too close to the wave." Mara opened a channel. "Admiral, we have a stranded ship." Ilias did not hesitate. "Coordinates." A human cruiser broke from the wall, diving toward the stranded vessel. The wave brushed against its shields. The cruiser shook, systems screaming, but it pushed through. The crew of the colony ship watched in disbelief as the human ship appeared, like a guardian out of the dark. A voice came over their channel. "This is the cruiser Valiant. Lock onto our wake. We're getting you out." The jump was rough. Lights went out. People screamed. But when the stars returned, they were behind the wall. Cheers filled the ship. The Valiant did not make it back to the line. Its systems failed as it crossed. The wave touched it, and the cruiser vanished into distortion and light. On Ilias's deck, a silence fell. Mara closed her eyes. The wall held, but it was thinner now. The cost was rising. A council general stepped forward in the chamber, voice shaking. "We cannot ask this of you, not after what we did." Mara looked at them. "We're not doing this for you," she said. "We're doing this for everyone who's running behind us." The last evacuation ships cleared the frontier worlds. Greenfall's final transport lifted off, leaving the planet quiet and empty, its silver grass waving in the wind. Morno watched from the viewport as her world shrank into a blue-green dot. She whispered goodbye, not knowing if anyone would ever return. "Admiral," a voice said, "evacuation complete." Ilias closed his eyes. "Understood." He opened them and looked at the wall. The wave pressed harder than ever. "Begin withdrawal," he said, slow and even. "Don't let it surge." Human ships and stations began to fall back in a careful dance, always keeping the line smooth. The deep fields flared one last time, buying precious moments. The wave followed, slow and heavy. In the council chamber, Speaker Halleck spoke into a galaxy-wide channel. "All worlds, this is the council. Humanity has stood between us and the dark. We will not forget this." Mara watched the feed, her face tired but proud. The last human station folded away from the front. The wall became a line of ships, then a trail of light, then nothing at all. The wave moved forward into empty space, but the galaxy behind it was alive. On the Resolute, Ilias sank into his chair. The room was quiet, broken only by soft system sounds. "We did it," someone whispered. Ilias nodded. "We did, this time." Mara's voice came through the channel. "The council is reorganizing. They're calling it a new alliance, equal seats, shared command." Ilias gave a small, tired smile. "Good, they learned." Myra looked out at the stars from the chamber window. The galaxy felt different now, smaller, closer. Human ships moved among council fleets, not as buffers, not as shields, but as partners. The wave was still out there. It had not been destroyed, only pushed back. But the galaxy had changed. The idea of sacrifice had been replaced by something else, standing together. As the stars settled into a new, quiet pattern, Mara whispered to herself, "Next time we won't stand alone." The galaxy was quiet, too quiet. After weeks of relentless pressure, of warnings shouted across comm channels, of entire systems evacuated and relocated, the first real silence settled across human and council-controlled space. Humanity's frontier line had held. The dark wave that had pushed into the galaxy had slowed, diverted, and retreated, leaving behind only faint distortions in space and shattered probes as proof of its passage. Ships that had survived the encounter drifted in slow arcs, systems blinking on and off as engineers repaired what the dark had touched. On Dawnreach, Commander Morgan looked out at the empty stars, his reflection floating across the thick observation window. For the first time in months, he allowed himself to breathe. The calm was almost too perfect. "Are we done?" Lieutenant Daz asked softly, leaning against the console. Morgan shook his head. "Done? No, but for now, yes, the wave isn't gone, just held at bay." The crew knew the truth. Humanity had not defeated the unknown. They had outsmarted it long enough to give the galaxy time to survive. Every ship, every station, every human-made field had worked as part of a single, enormous plan. They had slowed something that did not pause for life or death, and they had done it without striking a single blow of offense. Across the frontier, evacuated colonies began returning. Families who had watched the stars go dark now returned to worlds scarred but still alive. On Greenfall, Governor Morno greeted the first transport returning home. Her world was still standing, its oceans calm, silver grass waving softly in the breeze, but she knew that it had been only through human intervention that it had survived. She watched as children ran back to the schools, as farmers returned to their fields, and she whispered a quiet prayer of thanks for the species she had once thought was small, limited, and fragile. Back at Earthside Command, Admiral Ilias and Mara Sato were reviewing reports. The human fleets had suffered losses, yes, but the losses were minimal compared to the potential destruction. Systems that would have fallen first had been evacuated. Lives were preserved. And humanity had shown the galaxy a principle they had always lived by: survival without surrender. "The Council will have to change," Mara said, eyes tracing the lines of data flowing across the screens. "They cannot ignore what we did, not now." Ilias nodded. "They already are. We're seeing the first motions. Delegates are calling emergency sessions. They're discussing a restructured alliance, equal seats, shared command. They know they can't go back to old politics." Outside, human ships moved through the frontier systems like calm guardians. They no longer led fleets of council vessels. They coordinated, protected, and supported. Ships carrying refugees, critical supplies, and rebuilding materials followed the patterns humans had designed. It was clear now that humanity had not sought glory. They had sought survival. And in doing so, they had earned respect, not fear, not reverence, but genuine, lasting trust. In the newly reorganized Galactic Council chamber, Halleck stood before the delegates, feathers ruffled and eyes tired. For the first time, the chamber felt different. It no longer held the tense perfection of protocol. There was humility in the air, and there was recognition. "Delegates," Halleck said, voice steady, "we have witnessed an extraordinary action. Humanity stood between us and a force we could not comprehend. They did not fight to dominate. They did not fight for power. They fought to protect all of us." A murmur passed through the chamber. Some delegates bowed their heads, others whispered in disbelief. Mara Sato stood at the back, observing silently, letting the words settle. This was the moment she had anticipated, not when the Council would beg for forgiveness, not when the galaxy would pay tribute, but when they would finally understand what it meant to be human. A counselor from the Sulari species stepped forward, trembling. We failed to act with foresight. We thought we were protecting our own. We did not understand that humanity's presence was not just a matter of borders, it was a matter of life itself." Mara did not respond. She had no need to. The message had been delivered through deeds, not speeches. The galaxy had seen what humans could do when they chose to act. In the outer frontier, Commander Morgan coordinated the final stages of withdrawal from the forward positions. The deep fields folded away, and stations returned to normal mode. Engineers worked without pause, patching every minor failure, making the stations ready for normal operations again. Ships that had risked their hulls to shield evacuation fleets were repaired, refueled, and readied for peacetime tasks. Morgan's eyes rested on the stars beyond. Somewhere out there, the dark wave lingered, slow and patient. He did not feel fear. He felt understanding. Humanity had shown it could survive anything, alone or with allies, And if the dark returned, humanity would return stronger. On a returning transport ship, a small group of human and alien children sat together in the observation lounge, watching stars streak past during a jump. One of the children, an alien from the outer worlds, turned to a human boy beside them. "Do humans always fight like that?" they asked. The human boy shrugged. "We don't always fight, we just protect, that's what matters." The alien child nodded slowly, trying to understand, and then smiled. "I think I like your way." Back in the council chamber, Mara observed the reorganized vote for the first time. Human delegates had been given full authority, not as intermediaries, not as mere advisors, but as equals. Every motion for evacuation, reconstruction, and frontier security required human approval. Humanity would no longer be expendable. Humanity would no longer be treated as a buffer. Humanity had shown that being willing to stand was more powerful than any starship fleet. On the bridge of the Resolute, Ilias and Mara watched the first council fleets return to the frontier. Ships that had fled the approaching darkness now came back under human guidance. Civilian transports, research vessels, and council patrol ships moved carefully, guided by humans who understood not just strategy but survival. "Look at them," Mara said, her voice soft but firm. "They're learning," Ilias nodded. "Not from lectures, from experience." Morgan's station, Dawnreach, served as the central hub now. Ships of all kinds docked, unloaded supplies, took on passengers, and departed again. Humans coordinated movements without authority imposed, simply because the galaxy trusted them to know what was right. On Greenfall, Governor Morno oversaw the reconstruction of her world. Roads repaired, power restored, and schools reopened. Her people spoke often of the humans who had saved them, not as conquerors, not as saviors in a story, but as neighbors who had chosen to act when others had hesitated. Mara visited the planet once, standing quietly as the wind moved across silver grass fields. A small child ran past, laughing. Mara smiled. Humanity had given the galaxy more than survival. They had given it hope, the hope that even when powerful forces moved in secret, even when betrayal seemed inevitable, courage could still define the future. Back in the council chamber, a historian from a core world stood to speak. "When we record this event," they said, voice trembling with awe, "we must note that humanity did not simply fight. Humanity chose to protect. Humanity chose to act when we hesitated. And in doing so, they redefined what it means to be a part of the galaxy." Mara nodded quietly. She did not need the recognition. It was enough that the galaxy had seen the truth. Across the frontier, human fleets patrolled, not as aggressors, but as guardians. Research teams returned to previously lost systems, finding that many stations and probes had survived the wave untouched, thanks to the human interventions. Communities returned to their homes. Trade resumed along routes humans had maintained during the crisis. At Earthside Command, Ilias leaned back in his chair, hands clasped. "We've done what we came here to do," he said. "The galaxy is safe for now." Mara looked at the display of returning human and council fleets. "Safe," she echoed, "but not because of the council's decisions. Safe because we chose to act." The Admiral's voice softened. "And that is what they will remember." In quiet moments, Mara thought of the wave, of the unknown beyond known space, of the countless dangers that humanity might face in the future. She thought of her ancestors, of generations who had survived wars, famines, and cosmic disasters. She thought of the children she would never meet, but who would inherit a galaxy strengthened by her people's actions. A message came through from the small Sulari delegate she had spoken with months ago. It simply read, "We owe you our lives, we will not forget." Myra read it and allowed herself a faint smile. Humanity had taught the galaxy a lesson in courage, not through conquest. Not through war, but through action, foresight, and sacrifice when it had counted most. In the deep reaches of space, beyond the edge of known systems, the wave lingered. It had been slowed, held, delayed. Humanity had not destroyed it, but they had shown it that the galaxy would not yield. And in that pause, life thrived. Systems returned. Stars shone brighter, communities healed. Mara Sato looked at the stars from her cabin aboard the Resolute. The galaxy stretched wide before her. "We didn't fight for glory," she whispered. "We fought to stand, and now they understand what it means to stand together." Across the frontier, human ships moved as one, silent and steady. Across the council worlds, fleets reorganized, citizens returned, leaders reflected. Humanity had been betrayed, marked as expendable, and still they chose to act, not for vengeance, not for power, but for life. And that life endured. The galaxy would remember, not the vote, not the betrayal, not the fear. They would remember the day humanity told the stars, the council, and the unknown beyond, we stand, we protect, and we will not be thrown aside. And somewhere in the quiet darkness beyond the frontier, the unknown waited, watching. But the galaxy had changed. It had learned that when humans acted, survival was not optional. Courage had a shape now. It was wide, slow, unyielding. It was humanity. The stars themselves seemed to shimmer in recognition, as if the universe understood. And in the hearts of those who had witnessed it, the council delegates, the colonists, the commanders, and the children, the same truth settled quietly. Humanity would always choose to stand.